The sound arrived first, an unnatural tremor on a street that prided itself on its tranquility. It was a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the manicured lawns and shook the perfectly painted windowpanes. It was the sound of rolling thunder on a cloudless afternoon, the sound of a dozen Harley-Davidson engines tearing through the quiet fabric of suburbia. They rode in formation, a phalanx of steel and black leather, their vests emblazoned with the coiled, menacing sigil of the iron serpents. Their shadows, long and distorted in the late afternoon sun, slid over picket fences and rose gardens like a creeping stain. Behind the safety of closed doors, the neighborhood held its breath. Curtains twitched as anxious eyes peered out. A man watering his petunias froze, the hose falling slack in his hand. Mothers, sensing a primal shift in the air, called their children inside, their voices sharp with an unnamed fear. Even the gentle breeze seemed to die down, as if unwilling to carry the scent of gasoline and worn leather any further. The world of cul-de-sacs and neighborhood watches had been invaded by an element it could not comprehend. But then, slicing through the mechanical roar, another sound emerged. It was small, fragile, and almost lost in the engine rumble, yet it possessed a power that made the chrome and steel falter. It was the voice of a child, trembling but clear, laced with a desperation that was heartbreakingly out of place. "Excuse me, sir. Would you buy my bicycle?" The lead rider, a man whose presence commanded respect even among his formidable brethren, raised a gloved hand. One by one, the engine sputtered into a low, menacing idle. He swung a heavy leg over his machine, his boots landing on the pavement with a solid, authoritative thud. The others followed suit, a silent, disciplined crew, their collective gaze falling upon the source of the plea. There, at the edge of the sidewalk, stood a little girl who couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her blonde hair was a tangled mess, a stark contrast to the impossibly neat, though slightly faded, sundress she wore. Her shoes were scuffed and worn, the soles separating from the fabric, a testament to miles walked in search of something she shouldn't have had to look for. Beside her stood a small pink bicycle, its white basket empty and its handlebar streamers drooping sadly. In her small, dirt-smudged hands, she clutched a piece of cardboard, the words, "For sale," scrawled in wavering crayon. The lead biker, the one they called Ghost, moved toward her. He was a mountain of a man, his arms covered in a tapestry of intricate tattoos that told stories of loss and survival. He moved with a slow, deliberate grace, careful not to startle the small creature before him. He knelt down, bringing his formidable frame to her level, the setting sun glinting off the chrome skull on his belt buckle. The contrast was jarring, the hardened warrior and the fragile child, two worlds colliding on a sun-drenched sidewalk. Her name was Lily, and her blue eyes, wide and searching, held a weariness that had no place on a child's face. It was the deep, soul-crushing exhaustion of an old soldier who had seen too many battles. Ghost followed her gaze, which flickered to a spot far behind her, toward a large oak tree in the nearby park. There, slumped against the trunk, was a figure wrapped in a thin, frayed blanket. Even from this distance, he could see the woman's pallor, the gauntness of her features. She was a ghost herself, fading into the background of a world that had forgotten her. A knot tightened in the biker's throat, a familiar ache he hadn't felt in years. Lily's voice, small but resolute, pulled him back. "Please, sir," she whispered, her knuckles white as she gripped the cardboard sign. "My mommy hasn't eaten in 2 days. If you believe that courage can be found in the smallest of hearts and that compassion can rise from the most unexpected places, please take a moment to show your support. A simple like, a thoughtful comment, a share, or a subscription to the Compassion Chronicle helps us tell stories like this one, reminding us all that a single act of kindness can ripple out and change the world." The man kneeling before Lily was known as Jax to the world, but his brothers in the Iron Serpents called him Ghost. The nickname wasn't about being frightening, it was about what he had become after life had stripped everything from him. It spoke of a man who moved through the world without leaving a mark, a man haunted by the phantoms of a life he once had. He'd had a father who vanished like smoke, a wife taken by a cruel twist of fate, and a son, a son whose laughter he could still hear in the rustling of leaves, a memory that was both a comfort and a constant, searing pain. He had buried his heart long ago, encased it in leather and steel, convinced that faith in humanity was a fool's game. But now, kneeling on the hot asphalt with this small girl's desperate eyes fixed on him, he felt a fissure in that hardened shell. A forgotten warmth began to seep through the cracks. He asked her, his voice softer than he thought possible, what she meant. And in a torrent of halting words and silent tears that tracked clean paths down her dusty cheeks, Lily told him everything. Her mother, Sarah, was a good person. She had always worked hard, her hands always busy, her smile always ready. She had been a chef's assistant at a high-end catering company, a place known for its lavish parties and gourmet food. The company was owned by a man named Mr. Sterling, a local titan of industry whose face was a permanent fixture on the covers of business magazines and at charity galas, always smiling for the cameras, his generosity a carefully curated performance. Then came the restructuring, a cold, clinical word that meant lives were about to be shattered. Sarah was one of the first to be let go. Lily recounted how her mother had pleaded with Mr. Sterling, not for a handout, but for a chance. She had begged him to keep her on for just a few more weeks, long enough to find something else, long enough to keep food on the table for her daughter. But Mr. Sterling, with a dismissive wave of his hand, had told her she was easily replaceable. A cog in a machine he could swap out at will. Since that day, a creeping despair had settled over their small world. Sarah, weakened by stress and malnutrition, had fallen ill. The rejection had broken something inside her, and she no longer had the strength to search for new work. The bills began to stack up like monuments to their failure. The refrigerator, once a source of comfort, became a hollow, empty box. Pride, a stubborn and cruel companion, had kept Sarah from asking for help from neighbors who were already struggling themselves. So Lily, seeing her mother fade away, had taken matters into her own hands. She had taken her most prized possession, the pink bicycle that represented freedom and childhood joy, and decided to trade it for her mother's life. As he listened, Jax felt something inside him, a tightly coiled spring of long-buried rage, finally snap. The world went silent, the idling engines, the chirping birds, all of it faded away, replaced by a roaring in his ears. His brothers, Crusher, a giant whose quiet demeanor hid immense strength, Snake, whose sharp eyes missed nothing, and Brick, solid and unmovable as his name suggested, saw the change in him. They had seen that look before, a dangerous calm that preceded a storm. It wasn't pity they felt as they looked from the child to her ailing mother. It was a cold, righteous fury, the kind that ignites when innocence is trampled by the careless boots of greed. Without a word, they exchanged glances. An entire conversation passed between them in a shared nod. This was no longer just a chance encounter, it was a mission. Jax reached into the inner pocket of his leather vest, his movements slow and deliberate. He pulled out a worn leather wallet, thick with the cash they used for road expenses. He didn't count it. He simply took the entire wad of bills and gently pressed it into Lily's small, trembling hand. Her eyes widened, first at the money, then at his face, searching for the catch. "Keep the bicycle, kiddo," he murmured, his voice a low rumble, thick with an emotion he couldn't name. "It's worth more than this." But this was not the end. It was only the beginning. He couldn't just give them money and ride away. He couldn't leave knowing that a man in a glass tower had the power to strip a woman of her dignity and a child of her future, and face no consequences. That wasn't justice. He looked at Lily, whose small hand was now clutching the money as if it were a sacred relic. He told her to go to her mother, to tell her that help had arrived, and he promised, with a solemnity that resonated with absolute truth, that he would be back very soon. Then, with a shared purpose that needed no words, the four men mounted their bikes. The engines roared to life in unison, a chorus of defiance that shattered the suburban peace once more. The iron serpents were not angels of mercy. They were purveyors of a different kind of justice, a raw and unflinching code forged on the open road. And that day, they weren't going to use fists or weapons. They were going to use something far more powerful, the truth. Their destination was Sterling Tower, a monument to avarice that pierced the city skyline. It was a structure of cold glass and polished steel, gleaming in the sunlight, reflecting a distorted version of the world below. It was a fortress built to keep the realities of the street out. But it wasn't built to keep the iron serpents out. The four men strode through the revolving doors, their heavy boots echoing like drumbeats on the immaculate marble floor. The cavernous lobby, filled with the quiet hum of commerce and the scent of expensive air freshener, fell silent. The security guard's hand hovered over his radio but went no further. The receptionist, a young woman with a headset and a practiced smile, froze mid-sentence, her mouth agape. Through the glass wall of a corner office on the top floor, Jax's eyes found their target. Mr. Sterling. A man defined by his tailored suit, his gold watch, and a smile that never reached his eyes. A man whose soft hands had likely never known a day of honest labor. What is the meaning of this intrusion? Sterling scoffed as they entered his sanctuary, his voice laced with the arrogance of a man who believed his money made him untouchable. Jax didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He walked calmly to the massive, pristine mahogany desk and gently placed the small, handwritten cardboard sign upon its polished surface. The crayon letters, "For Sale," looked absurd and profound in that temple of wealth. "That," Jax said, his voice a quiet storm, "is the price of your greed." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed the CEO's polished veneer. He looked from the sign to the four imposing figures who stood before him, their presence filling the room, sucking the very air out of it. Jax began to speak, his words painting a vivid picture for the insulated executive. He spoke of a little girl named Lily, forced to sell her only toy. He described her mother, Sarah, a talented and loyal employee, starving under a tree just a few miles from where they stood. He talked about a pink bicycle that held more love and value in its worn-out frame than all the luxury cars in Sterling's private garage combined. Sterling sputtered, attempting to defend himself with the familiar jargon of the corporate world. He mumbled about market forces, downsizing, and fiduciary responsibility. But his excuses withered and died under the weight of their silent, unwavering stares. This wasn't the rage of criminals, it was the burning fire of moral conviction. They hadn't come for his money or to cause him harm. They had come for his soul. They didn't need to hurt him. The truth was a sharper weapon. Jax leaned closer across the vast desk, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was more menacing than any shout. "We're not here to hurt you, Mr. Sterling. We're here to offer you an opportunity. You see, you don't get to buy forgiveness for what you've done. But you do get one chance, right now, to start earning it. You're going to do what's right." By sunset, a wave of astonishment was rippling through the town. Rumors spread like wildfire. The notoriously ruthless CEO of Sterling Enterprises had, completely out of the blue, made a massive anonymous donation to the local food bank, enough to provide a year's worth of groceries to dozens of families in need. He had anonymously paid off the outstanding medical bills for every single parent at the local hospital. And most shocking of all, he had personally called and rehired every employee he had recently laid off, offering them back pay and a significant raise. No one understood the sudden, radical transformation. They called it a miracle, a change of heart. Only 4 men on motorcycles, and a little girl with a pink bicycle, knew that it wasn't a change of heart. It was a reckoning. As evening painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, Jax and his brothers returned to the park. The rumble of their engines was softer this time, less a threat and more a gentle announcement of their arrival. Lily, her face scrubbed clean and her eyes shining with a light that hadn't been there hours before, saw them first. She ran toward them, not with fear, but with unadulterated joy, her small legs pumping as fast as they could carry her. Her mother, Sarah, was standing now. She was still frail, leaning against the oak tree for support, but she was on her feet. And she was smiling, a real, genuine smile that transformed her tired face. As Jax dismounted, the last rays of sunlight caught the tears of gratitude welling in her eyes. She tried to speak, to find the words to thank him, but her hand trembled and her voice caught in her throat. Jax simply gave a slow, respectful nod, tipping his head slightly. The engines ticked and cooled in the quiet evening air. "You don't owe us a thing," he said, his voice gentle. "Just make us a promise. Promise you'll never give up again." That night, they shared a meal under the stars. Crusher had returned with bags of warm bread, roasted chicken, and fresh fruit. They sat on the grass in a strange, beautiful circle, the hardened bikers, the recovering mother, and the little girl whose courage had started it all. They broke bread together, a simple act that felt like a sacred ritual. The sunset cast a golden glow across the chrome of the motorcycles, the green of the grass, and the cardboard sign that now lay folded safely in Lily's lap, no longer a symbol of desperation, but a trophy of love's victory. For a brief, perfect moment, in the company of these unlikely saviors, the world didn't seem so broken anymore. If this story has resonated with you, if it serves as a reminder that heroes don't always wear capes and that compassion can be found in the most unexpected of souls, please consider taking a second to like, share, and subscribe to the Compassion Chronicle. Every interaction helps these stories of profound kindness find their way to those who need to believe and hope the most. And before you go, we'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What would you have done if you were in Jax's position? Because sometimes, all it takes is one person's courage to reignite the world's faith in the power of kindness.